They weren't the strongest, but for a time, they were unstoppable. Discover how Germany's military genius nearly changed the course of history forever. The Lightning War Unleashed. September 1st, 1939. Dawn, near the Polish border. A low growl ripples through the fog as the 1st Panzer Divisions roll forward, steel beasts crawling across the damp fields of Europe. The air trembles with the rhythmic churn of treads and the sharp, synchronized shouts of German officers. A young lieutenant, his breath clouding in the morning chill, glances at his watch, 4:45 a.m., and gives a single nod. Moments later, the sky erupts. Stukas dive in screaming arcs, their sirens, the infamous Jericho trumpets, wailing across the Polish countryside. Below, columns of infantry advance with machine-like precision, following an invisible rhythm choreographed by command posts miles behind. For the people on the ground, it feels less like a war and more like a storm, sudden, overwhelming, impossible to resist. This was Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War. But what the world didn't yet understand was that Blitzkrieg wasn't just about speed. It was a philosophy, a total synchronization of air, land, and communication. Germany's early success in World War II came not from brute strength, but from coordination so precise it bordered on art. Inside forward command trucks, radio operators barked coordinates into field sets, connecting pilots, tank commanders, and artillery in real time, a revolutionary concept in 1939. While Allied generals still relied on messengers and telegraphs, German officers used radio networks to pivot entire divisions within minutes. In the words of General Heinz Guderian, the architect of modern armored warfare, speed is the essence of war. His Panzer Corps didn't merely attack, they danced across the battlefield. Tanks would pierce enemy lines, dive deep into their rear, and encircle entire armies before they could retreat. Infantry followed in half-tracks. Engineers bridged rivers, and aircraft pounded strongpoints. A seamless machine where each cog knew its role. By mid-September, Poland was collapsing. Reports from the Polish front were almost unbelievable. German divisions, outnumbered and often outgunned, were advancing twice as fast as military theory said was possible. Warsaw fell in just 26 days. France, Britain, and the rest of Europe watched horrified as an entire nation disappeared before they could even respond. But Blitzkrieg's effectiveness wasn't just mechanical, it was psychological. German strategy exploited fear as a weapon. The relentless tempo of their attacks created an illusion of invincibility. Civilians fled, armies broke ranks, and governments crumbled before the tanks even arrived. To the world, Germany appeared unstoppable, a modern war machine reborn from the ashes of Versailles. And yet, behind this terrifying efficiency was something even more remarkable: discipline. Every soldier, from the lowest private to the highest general, was trained to act independently within their commander's intent, a principle called Auftragstaktik. Instead of waiting for orders, officers improvised, adapted, and seized opportunities. It gave German forces a flexibility their opponents lacked. When the fog of war descended, they didn't freeze, they moved faster. By 1940, as panzer columns massed along the Ardennes forest, even the most confident Allied commanders underestimated them. "No tanks can pass through those woods," said a French general. But the Germans did. Within 6 weeks, France, a nation that had held the line for 4 long years in World War I, was on its knees. German tanks rolled down the Champs-Élysées, while Hitler stood triumphant before the Eiffel Tower. Europe had fallen under the shadow of a new empire, and the world asked the same question: how did they do it? The answer lay not just in technology or leadership, but in mindset, a nation obsessed with precision, preparation, and speed. Every innovation, every doctrine, every soldier was part of a single, ruthless equation: efficiency equals victory. But that same equation held a fatal flaw, one that would, in time, destroy the machine it built: the engine of efficiency and the seeds of collapse. June 22nd, 1941, Eastern Front, the edge of the Soviet border. At 3:15 a.m., more than 3 million German soldiers stand ready, the largest invasion force in human history. Operation Barbarossa, the gamble that would decide Europe's fate. The night air hums with tension. In the dim red light of a Panzer IV, Sergeant Karl Hoffmann checks the oil gauge one last time. He hasn't slept in 30 hours. None of them have. When the first shells roar across the border, the ground itself shakes. "For Führer and Fatherland!" someone yells. Engines ignite. The invasion begins. Once again, Germany moves with terrifying precision. In the first weeks, Soviet defenses disintegrate. Thousands of Red Army soldiers are surrounded in vast pockets: Minsk, Smolensk, Kiev. German officers describe it as clockwork warfare. Columns advance along parallel routes, supported by dive bombers and motorized infantry. Orders flow instantly by radio. And within days, entire Soviet divisions vanish in encirclement after encirclement. By August, German troops are 200 miles from Moscow. It looks like another lightning victory, another Blitzkrieg miracle. But cracks begin to appear. The very strength that made Germany so effective, its dependence on coordination, its need for rapid movement, becomes its weakness on the vast Russian plains. Supply lines stretch thin across hundreds of miles. Engines seize in the dust. Fuel convoys can't keep up with the panzers. A machine built for precision begins to falter in the chaos of distance. And then, the rain comes. By October, the Russian Rasputitsa, the infamous mud season, turns roads into rivers of sludge. Tanks sink up to their turrets. Trucks stall. Horses replace vehicles. The Blitzkrieg rhythm dies in the muck, and German efficiency, so unstoppable in Europe's narrow roads, grinds to a miserable crawl. Inside command tents, officers argue over maps streaked with mud. Some plead for retreat. Others demand one final push toward Moscow before the winter closes in. Hitler, obsessed with speed and conquest, refuses to slow down. "The enemy is already finished," he insists. But the enemy is not finished. In December, the temperature drops below -30 degrees Celsius. German weapons jam. Soldiers wrap their boots in straw. Frostbite cripples entire units. The Soviet counterattack slams into exhausted, freezing troops, pushing them back from the capital. For the first time, the Wehrmacht, the once invincible German army, retreats. And with that retreat, the myth of invincibility begins to die. Germany's early effectiveness was born of genius, but also arrogance. The same discipline and innovation that conquered Europe blinded its leaders to the limits of their power. They believed efficiency could overcome nature, willpower could replace logistics, and ideology could dictate reality. By 1943, the tide has turned. At Stalingrad, surrounded and starving, German troops fight street by street, house by house, until entire divisions are erased. The machine that once devoured nations begins to consume itself, and yet even in defeat their precision remains haunting. Allied generals studying captured documents are stunned by the detail: radio codes, maintenance schedules, ammunition statistics, all recorded with mechanical obsession. Germany's early success wasn't an accident. It was the result of a nation that turned warfare into engineering. But war, unlike a machine, breathes. It resists control. It punishes overconfidence. Germany's brilliance in the early years of World War II reshaped modern combat forever, from armored warfare to aerial strategy, from logistics to leadership. But that same brilliance, untempered by humility, became its undoing. As the ruins of Berlin smoldered in 1945, one truth remained. The greatest weapon Germany ever wielded was not its tanks or planes, but its discipline, its speed, and its belief that perfection could conquer chaos. In the end, chaos won.